So Adam, here we are again. We have two new rifles to look at. Can you tell me what they are and what their names are?
Cool, well we've got two muskets here, okay, and we'll come on to that later on, but we've now moved into what we could call the perfection of the flintlock mechanism. We'll have seen in the last episode the dog lock, which was not a true flintlock, had no half cock, and I'll demonstrate that later. These started off with this, essentially in the 1720s. Standardisation occurred in the British military. We've been referring to the British Army as the British Army, but the British Army didn't exist by name until 1707 and the Acts of Union. Before then it was the New Model Army, the English Army. So we're truly, the British Army has been established. And this arm really, this forged an empire, okay? So around 1720s, this was brought into what we call corps as the general firearm used by all branches of the infantry. And there were variants used for the Navy as well. I won't go into too much detail on those. And essentially what this brought was a standard caliber and a standard pattern, hence the name Land Pattern Series or Land Pattern. This started life at a big 46 inches in length and ended up being a lot shorter, as you can see here in the short Land Pattern, which I'll talk about a bit later on. These really were, like I said, the perfection of the flintlock mechanism, and they were a symbol of the industrial age. These were being churned out literally in the hundreds of thousands, used all over the world in every conflict, every colonial conflict, every major war. So this weapon was used in the opening shots at Lexington in the American War of Independence, and also was used in the closing shots at the Battle of Waterloo. It really does have so much history to it, and really was a rival to anything our European foes and friends had at the time.
I see. So what would this have fired then?
Glad you asked. It would actually fire a 75 caliber lead ball, really, a round ball. Bear in mind, again, we're working with a smooth bore, so there's no rifling, that doesn't spin, and that is hurtling out the barrel, effective up to about 100 yards, so 90 metres, and fired in volley, a volley fire weapon. So this would be the thin red line, as we know it. Soldiers lined up under orders of an officer or an NCO, and they would produce that volley fire, pushing out that devastating effect.
That's very, very heavy. Would the soldier himself carry that round, or would there have been somebody behind him carrying buckets of it? How would that work?
No, so the soldier at the time would have carried essentially a satchel. I mean, there were different regiments carried different versions of this, referred to as ammunition bag, and essentially they would have this wrapped in a paper cartridge. So when we talked about the matchlock, these were kept almost individually. And also not uniform either. Whereas by the 18th century, we've now got this contained within a paper cartridge. What did that mean? A cartridge about so big, wrapped in paper. In that paper was a measure of powder, so enough powder to launch this out. And I'll go through the loading process in a second, but essentially that ensured enough powder was carried with that charge, so you could ensure a degree of uniformity in your shooting. And
what kind of range could you expect from this musket?
I mean, best from a fairly new recruit, we could at best get about 100 yards, so 90 metres, fairly accurately, a sort of a man-sized target at that distance. I mean, volley fire, you could stretch it out to 200, maybe 300 yards, but you're kind of in the lap of the gods there. There's no guarantee that's going to make its mark.
And I see as well the little notch on the edge of the barrel here. So is that like the beginning of a rudimentary sight system?
In a strange way, yes. So because in this series we're not talking about the bespoke weapons like the rifles that were issued. This was the rifle used by the everyday infantryman, and the use of sights, because of the inaccuracy of the weapon, was almost unnecessary. What that actually was used for was this. So this is the socket bayonet, which essentially means it can be attached, and I won't again because these are very old pieces, to the ends of these muskets, and that piece of metal is called a lug.
I see.
Locks on and can be used, but it also can be used as a rudimentary sight as well.
I see. So obviously then we have the long pattern, but in front of us we have the short pattern. So could you explain to us how this fella came about?
So there were different sort of variations and developments of the land pattern series. Like I said, it started off a lot longer. After about 20 to 40 years of use, it was reduced in size. And then at the height of, or the beginning and into the height of the Napoleonic Wars, it was shortened to become what is known as the short land pattern. There were several variations of this. There was the sea land pattern, there were cavalry carbines, all essentially using exactly the same lock, but all they've done is cut down the barrel, made it slightly shorter. They realised after many years of campaign use that having a barrel sort of 40 plus inches in length was unnecessary. They could get the same thing from a shorter barrel.
So it's basically not how long it is, it's what you do with it.
Absolutely. And this weapon, absolutely, like I said before, forged an empire. You know, this matched against the best the French could bring to bear in the Chevelle musket. Absolutely on par, really finely crafted. And as I said before, this really highlights the industrial age, or the beginnings of an industrial age, because we're now seeing a standardisation. So if we come in here, we'll see proof marks. We'll also see the tower marks down here. So that's the marks, or actually more here is clearer, marks here. That essentially means this piece of equipment has been measured, proofed, and there's a degree of quality control. So these are very finely made for the day weapon systems.
Fascinating. Could we have a closer look at the firing mechanism?
Yeah, of course. So again, respectively, 1730, 1803, I won't use the firing mechanism. But what we have here is a very good reproduction of a short land pattern. So, sorry.
That's right.
you can see it's got all the component parts. It's brass furniture, but that's about it really. So it essentially is a copy of this. You'll notice as well when we've gone to the this pattern, we've moved away from a wooden ramrod, which we had in the doglock, to a metal ramrod. And I'll go through the loading process if you like.
Sure, let's have a look.
Cool. So initially you would take, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so you have your lock here, okay, half cock, you see this, open the frizzen, this is called a frizzen. Remember that charge I told you with the paper cartridge? You bite off the paper cartridge, top of it, pour a tiny bit into the pan, close the frizzen, okay, keep it at half cock for now. You then put it to the ground, you then remove your ramrod, your paper cartridge, which has got the ball, you pour the rest of the powder in, and the paper. Ball goes down. I won't put it down for now. Gets rammed home. Ooh, excuse me. Balled up to aim. Okay. Full cock. Fire. You'll notice there the sparks that went down. That would ignite the powder.
Wow.
Charge would go off.
Fabulous. So simple but effective.
Very, very effective. And, you know, this is essentially the perfection of the flintlock mechanism. It's a fine piece of engineering and was used, like I said before, in some of the most notable conflicts of the 18th and into the 19th century. This wasn't phased out until the 1840s. Right. And actually they did try in, they changed the mechanism here to use a percussion cap, which we'll talk about in another episode. It essentially had a good solid 120 years of solid use.
Wow.